January 14th, 1966. A freezing Moscow morning. Sergey Korolev, the legendary chief designer of the Soviet space program, lies unconscious on an operating table. It is supposed to be a routine procedure to remove colon polyps. But the lead surgeon discovers unexpected tumors. Suddenly, the scalpel slips. Panic sets in. The anesthesiologist rushes to intubate him, but Korolev's jaw was shattered in the gulag. It was poorly set. It cannot open wide enough. The tube won't fit. As the master architect suffocates, the Soviet moonshot dies with him. But in another world, the surgeon's hand never wavers. The polyps are successfully removed. Korolev wakes up. Within 2 months, the chief designer is back at his desk at OKB-1. He finds his colossal N-1 rocket project spiraling into a logistical nightmare. Bitter political rivals are actively sabotaging his work. But Korolev is alive, and he moves instantly to consolidate his power. To save his program, Korolev plays his ultimate card. He leverages his political capital with Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev. The suffocating bureaucratic gridlock breaks. His rivals, including the defiant engine designer Valentin Glushko, are neutralized. Korolev knows they cannot beat Apollo 11 by rushing blindly. He makes a calculated strategic pivot. He halts production on the volatile, single-use NK-15 engines. These power plants cannot be test-fired before launch. Instead, he orders the immediate acceleration of the reusable, highly reliable NK-33 engine program. This gives his team a robust power plant they can actually test, refine, and trust. Under Korolev's watchful eye, static tests catch the plumbing errors. Engineers eliminate the destructive fuel line vibrations. The complex engine cluster is finally synchronized. By late 1968, the massive Soviet booster is stable, integrated, and waiting on the pad. June 1969. The space race is reaching its boiling point. At the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the N-1 towers over Launch Complex 110. It is a sleek, conical titan. Its base is wider than a 2-lane highway. Inside, 300,000 tons of volatile propellant weight. In our history, this giant launched 4 times. It disintegrated 4 times. One failure triggered one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in human history. But in this timeline, Korolev's insistence on absolute quality control and rigorous static testing pays off. No political shortcuts are tolerated. Every weld is inspected. Every redundant system is verified. Telemetry arrays are thoroughly upgraded. The Kremlin demands a spectacular triumph before the American Apollo mission can even lift off. The command is given. Ignition. 30 engines roar to life in perfect synchronization. A blinding torrent of white-hot plasma floods the flame trench. It shakes the frozen steppe for 50 miles. The sound wave is a violent physical force. It shatters windows in distant settlement towns. Slowly, the monster rises. Korolev's team has completely shielded the telemetry lines. This prevents the electrical interference that doomed the system in our world. The core control system manages the massive combined thrust without a single glitch. The first stage separates cleanly. The second stage ignites. The Soviet Union has just placed a moon-capable, super-heavy spacecraft into a stable, low-Earth orbit. In Washington, CIA analysts stare at spy satellite imagery. They watch in disbelief. The massive exhaust plume is clearly visible from orbit. The realization hits the White House like a physical blow. The race is lost. Neil Armstrong is still in training. June 24th, 1969. The eyes of the world are glued to their television screens. But they are not watching NASA. They are watching Alexei Leonov. Leonov is already a Soviet icon. He was the first man to walk in open space. He once survived freezing Siberian nights. He fought off wolves when his capsule drifted off course. Now, he is falling toward the lunar surface alone. The American lunar module relies on automation. Leonov has no such luxury. He must guide his craft down by eye and manual control. He peers through a tiny, angled viewport. The single engine fights the moon's gravity. With only seconds of propellant left, Leonov takes the stick. He steers away from a field of sharp boulders. Touchdown. Dust settles into the vacuum. Leonov vents the cabin. He pulls open the hatch. He descends the ladder. On his shoulder sits the red star. There is no poetic speech about a giant leap for mankind. Instead, he speaks directly to the Soviet people. He dedicates the triumph to the endurance of the socialist state. He drives the red flag deep into the ancient lunar soil. Apollo 11 is still sitting on its Florida launch pad. The United States has not just lost the race. They have been entirely outclassed. Global perception shifts in an instant. The world looks up at the night sky and sees a red moon. This geopolitical shockwave completely reshapes Washington. In our world, Victory in 1969 led to budget cuts. It ended the Apollo program. In this timeline, defeat triggers pure panic. President Richard Nixon refuses to concede space to the Soviets. The space race does not end. It mutates into a multi-decade, heavily weaponized campaign. Nixon signs a sweeping executive order. NASA's funding balloons to 10% of the federal budget. The mission is no longer scientific exploration. It is strategic dominance. At Mission Control in Houston, the maps prepared for Armstrong are suddenly useless. Space is now a theater of Cold War conflict. Though Apollo 11 launches weeks later, the mood is somber. Armstrong and Aldrin walk on the moon. But a silver medal offers no comfort to a humiliated nation. The American public remains indifferent. Nixon demands a military response. The Pentagon immediately hijacks the space shuttle program. In this timeline, the shuttle is never built as a peaceful scientific workhorse. It is engineered from day one as a heavily armored military platform. Its mission is active combat. It launches spy satellites. It intercepts Soviet orbiters. It deploys kinetic weapons from space. The sky becomes a fortress. Both superpowers realize that whoever dominates orbit controls the planet below. By the early 1970s, Moscow moves to defend its lunar highway. They deploy a network of heavily armed military outposts in low Earth orbit. These are the Almaz stations, masked to the public as peaceful Salyut laboratories. In our reality, the Soviets secretly test-fired a modified 23mm cannon. They did it once, from an unmanned Salyut station. Fearing violent vibrations, they never fired it again. But in this highly militarized orbit, weapon systems are standard. Cosmonauts train with recoil-compensated weapons designed for vacuum combat. Washington counters with Project Brilliant Pebbles, a sprawling orbital shield. Thousands of autonomous kinetic interceptors wait to smash Soviet satellites out of orbit. Orbit is no longer a silent void. It is a crowded, hypersensitive web. Tracking arrays, laser platforms, nuclear-powered radar stations. Even the moon itself is partitioned. The Soviets established the Zvezda base in the Shackleton crater. This lunar South Pole stronghold offers near-constant sunlight. The Americans respond by resurrecting Project Horizon. This once-abandoned blueprint outlines a heavily fortified militarized outpost. Astronauts and cosmonauts watch each other through high-powered telephoto lenses. They stare across desolate craters, separated by only a few miles of vacuum. The threat of a lunar skirmish is a daily, terrifying reality. By the turn of the century, the high-frontier rivalry has advanced human tech by generations. With no Soviet collapse, there is no International Space Station. The Cold War simply shifts permanently to the stars. The constant threat of orbital strikes drives rapid breakthroughs. Physics, computing, energy, all advanced by generations. Nuclear thermal rockets were abandoned in our world. Here, they are the standard workhorses of lunar transit. Earth is wrapped in a dense, precise satellite network. Every satellite is heavily armored against electromagnetic pulses. But the price of this progress is staggering. Humanity has weaponized the heavens. A single satellite collision could trigger Kessler syndrome. This chain reaction would trap humanity beneath a lethal dome of high-speed shrapnel. The threat hangs over every single diplomatic summit. The Soviet Union endures. Its economy remains afloat through lunar helium, mining and state-run telecommunications. It is a tense, silent standoff stretching across the solar system. Every thread traces back to a surgeon's steady hand on a cold January morning in Moscow. A Soviet moon landing remains one of history's greatest what-ifs. But the terrifying orbital weapons built to defend that empire were soberingly real. And the true story of those secret space weapons is far more dangerous than any fiction.